Oh, it's Happy Times and Places, you know, that podcast where the git off all the DVDs is cloyingly sentimental and tries to pretend that all Doctor Who was really good. And, at the same time, in a contrived way, tries to select his favourite thing about the episode that he's wanging on about.
Hi, I'm Reuben. I'm a Doctor Who fan. I'm picking The Green Death. It's the beginning of the end of the Unit family era and such a sweet goodbye to Joe Grant.
Welcome, everybody. It's nearly midnight, I'm on my own, and I'm about to watch Doctor Who. What more could a human being want? A special hello to Stephen Schapansky of Radio Free Skaro, with whom I've just been doing a podcast, not for his podcast, Radio Free Skaro, which you don't need me to introduce you to. It is the doyen of Doctor Who podcasts, and, you know, the original, you might say, or certainly, you know, the really groundbreaking one. And Stephen is a lovely fellow who I've just been on a Missing Episodes podcast with Tim Burrows and many people who've contributed greatly to helping encourage my output here in the audio sphere. David Gillespie Pratt, whose Twitter feed I urge anybody with an interest in Missing Episodes and TV ephemera to check out, and Oliver Wake, who's helped me immeasurably with aspects of my Quatermass book, and Tim himself, who does the Missing Episodes podcast, which again, I'm sure anybody who listens to my witterings definitely is on Tim's case, listening to his stuff as soon as it comes out. So anyway, we've just been recording something for that, which will be well in the past when you listen to this if you are not a patron, whereas if you're in Patronville, it's the reason that this release, Wednesday's release, there's a release on Wednesdays, there isn't Patronville, is a little bit late. And Stephen said when I signed off, Toby's going to go and watch The Green Death now. He's like, he's absolutely right. So because currently in Patronville, I'm sort of recording and releasing. I have nothing banked, whereas if you are not a subscriber to my Patreon, you know, I will be uploading this with months to go, because as I record this, I have, you know, we are not in RTD2. I've not seen Shutigatwa. I've not seen any of the David Tennant specials. Those 25 missing episodes haven't come back. No, I wish. Well, maybe I'm manifesting them into being. Yes, those 25 missing episodes that we didn't even know about when I recorded this in, when are we, September, it is the 20th of September I'm recording this, 2023, so 60 years to the day after the photographs of William Hartnell, Carol Ann Ford, William Russell and Jacqueline Hill on the sets for An Unearthly Child were taken. So Doctor Who was just starting. Rehearsals started tomorrow. But unfortunately, I'm doing The Green Death, which has absolutely nothing to do with any of that. And I'm releasing this for patrons on the same day, or probably after midnight. It's probably the 21st. And to non-patrons, well, it'll probably be about 6 months later. So none of the dates tie in at all. But for when this is actually being recorded, that's what happened. Oh, and it's my friend John Turner's birthday. Happy birthday, John. So there we go. None of that has anything. I basically intended to just come on and say, hi, Stephen Schapansky, I've just literally finished talking to you, and now I'm recording The Green Death like you said I was going to. And instead, I've given you 3.5 minutes of surrounding information that is not relevant to anything that you and I, dear listener, are about to do, or indeed the lovely Reuben Herfindahl did in his introduction. We're going to watch The Green Death. It reminds me a bit, actually, of when I did a commentary for this, because I've done a lot of commentaries on The Green Death. I'm on the Blu-ray. No, I'm on the DVD special edition, which has now since gone on to Blu-ray. But I also did one for Phantom Films for their CD releases that we've done actually quite a few of now, and people seem to like those, which is lovely. And we decided to mix it up with John Levine. I can't remember why, and chose an episode that we hadn't originally said we were going to do. And so we said, let's do that episode. And we did it. And we got to the end and realised that we'd actually chosen an episode that John wasn't in. So we've done commentary on an episode that John Levine hasn't in with John Levine. But as you would imagine, John was not short of things to say, so it was absolutely fine. It might even have been this episode, because I'm not sure John is in this episode. Or do Benton and Yates turn up this week? Well, let's see, shall we? I'm going to watch a comfort blanket Who, really. Late Pertwee, lovely unit family. The last sort of hurrah, really, of the unit family, which is about to lose a key member. Roger Delgado has already sadly died, but by the time this is on, I think, were they making this? I think they were probably making this when they found out about the death of Roger Delgado. I may be incorrect on that. I might come back and correct myself in later episodes if I remember. Doesn't matter. I don't have to be entirely correct. This is pure... You listen to these for entertainment value, not facts. If you want facts, go to the BBC. Really. Yeah, I'm joking. I don't know why you listen to these. But anyway, thanks for doing so. But yeah, let's crack on with the Green Death. But actually, before I jump in, I mentioned in the last episode, because we're doing these sort of as live, so Chris Williams, a correspondent on patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, says, love the Green Death. It's in my head, it's the start of the Mike Yates trilogy, including dinosaurs and spiders. Very nice. But I'd mentioned the Peter Brooks book cover. And Chris rightly points out, in case anyone doesn't know, the original Target book cover you mentioned is by Peter Brooks, who has been the editorial cartoonist for The Times for over 30 years. This is quite right. He's won Cartoonist of the Year many times over at the Press Awards. He also picked up a CBE for services to media a few years ago. I do like his exciting covers and wish he'd done more of them. I like his exciting covers too, and they do sort of bristle with event. And yes, that's a nice tie that he actually has excelled in his field away from Doctor Who. And somebody should talk to him. I'm too tired. Somebody interview Peter Brooks, though. Go on. Somebody who knows about pens and colour. So, what is your pens? How did you the fly? The end. That would be my questioning. Anyway, but it's a beautiful book cover. It's a wonderful book cover. That giant fly squirting its green death onto Bessie's bonnet is a beautiful, beautiful thing. I'm now doubting that it's the bonnet, but I don't care. Don't write in. The spine of my green death, that green death that I have, is so battered from overuse. Its resale value is probably nil, but its comfort value is incalculable. So let us start watching episode 3 of The Green Death, the one with the maggots. I'm going to press play in 3, 2, 1. And and interestingly, I have some feedback also about what I was musing in the last episode about the closing titles being upside down. And I have a text from Peter Crocker telling me all about his theories, and that is on my phone, which is currently somewhere that I cannot see. So on that bombshell, we may return to the upside down closing titles. But here we are. I've got to watch this, and I've got to be aware of what Reuben Herfindahl might choose as his favourite thing. I'm loving this green lighting in the mine. I think in terms of being sort of worried about the bad CSO, there's some quite bad CSO. Has always set me on edge in the sort of mine scenes, because I know there's also a few polystyrene squeaks down below in the mines of Wales. But actually the darkness and the lighting in the general sets here is excellent. But look at those; they glisten. They've got, that skin looks real, and those teeth. That teeth. It's a fox's. The corpse of a fox gob, isn't it? Those teeth. Maggots, I'm sure, don't have teeth, but I don't care. Those ones do, and they look magnificent. And yes, it's nice to see that. Oh, so yes, so now they're going to do a bit that always used to worry me. I mean, because I remember when I got this on video, thinking, oh, there's so many scenes in the book that are so memorable that must look $1 million like Journey to the Center of the Earth or some of those movies that we were used to watching that had movie budgets, and then of course they're VT and CSO and not quite so good. I really feel for. He's the last miner standing because Di Evans has gone. Bert we don't see again. I don't know the way he says the Doctor was most emphatic. But he's. Oh, I really buy Talfrin Thomas's concern for his fellow miner there. And I actually rather like the way that I think a less cosy programme would have made the Brigadier and Cliff Jones, agin each other for the whole thing because, well, here's a military man. I'm not sure the Brigadier's moustache is quite high enough. I think Nicholas stuck caught his moustache on a little low this week. I've only just noticed that because I'm watching it on quite a big wall today. I think his moustache is a little bit low, I think Nicholas Courtney's moustache, if it grew, would grow a bit higher than that. Anyway, I like the fact that it would have been quite boring, I think, if they'd gone, well, the Brigadier is military, so he will be, everything he says, Professor Jones will go, well, that you would say that because you're a man from the military. And the Brigadier would be like, well, you're a slovenly hippie who doesn't like guns but only likes mud. And it would have been a bit boring. That's a clever use of the big maggot in the foreground, but they've, with the best will in the world, they've worked hard on making that CSO better than it certainly was in my youth. But it's still, it's still hard to take, which is a shame because the image that it gives, which is of loads of maggots crawling around in green stuff in a mine, is magnificent. What a beautiful idea. I like John Rolfe's performance in this, and John Rolfe, as I mentioned last week, as Fell, was in Richard III. He played Catesby with Edward Woodward, and my brother Patrick playing the elder of the princes in the Tower. And we asked, and John Rolfe is also the captain in the War Machines, and he's Sam in the Moonbase, but he didn't list Doctor Who in his credits in the programme for Richard III. So it took me, it was only a while later that I discovered this and was excited, because my brothers worked with him. But anyway, we invited him to be on the commentary for the Moonbase, and he politely but pithily declined. But then but because one of the things I do is I get picture frames signed for charity that to then auction off at the commentaries, and I thought, well, I'll try and get some people to sign who weren't there. So I sent pictures to Andre Moran, who played Benoit, and he sent them back, signed on the back, but very beautifully put a funny note on each one. And for some reason, I'd send him pictures because I didn't trust the frames to the post with him, because I don't know. Whereas my instinct with John Rolfe was, oh, well, he worked with my brother, he'll be lovely. So I sent him the picture frames to sign and said, we auction them off for charity. All I have to do is sign them, and here's a stamped addressed envelope, blah, 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 blah. And he sent them back unsigned. So he didn't keep them. They didn't get lost in the post or anything like that. But he obviously went, well, So I know some people think, well, they're going to auction these off eBay and make money out of me, and I'm not getting paid or whatever. I don't know his reason. But anyway, he was kind enough to return them, but he didn't sign them, and he didn't include a note or a letter. And I'd actually said, oh, when you were in Richard III with my brother and blah, 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 blah. So I thought that might be a connection, but for whatever reason. And I know sort of autograph hunters who said he signed stuff for them but never replied to letters or anything like that. So interesting how different people respond. And then you write to some people who think they're far too grand to reply, and they send you a lovely chatty letter or whatever. So you just never know. I like this. Are you threatening me, Mr. Stevens? I think perhaps I am. Counselling a little prudence is a lovely line as well. I do like boardroom yelling. I don't know why. It's very much my cup of tea. And of course, this is lovely because he phones the Minister of Ecology, who is Well, we will see shortly. And I was keeping an eye on the Brigadier's moustache there as well, although that might be a different session. This is, I think, where we get a slightly squeaky polystyrene egg. Again, the sort of thing that you say. Well, actually, a squeaky bit of polystyrene sets my teeth on edge at the best of time. Not just the wall wobbled a bit there as well. There aren't many wobbly sets in Doctor Who, but that bit of mine, shall we say, was not massively secure. You still get the squeak. I wondered if maybe Mark Ayres had erased that, but that was a very squeaky polystyrene mine wall. And that's quite a horrible. That noise is pretty fingernails on a blackboard at the best of times. But if you're a kid who's worried that Doctor Who is slightly shabby, that's kryptonite. Obviously, made of polystyrene. I remember liking Elgin in the book very much because he's the sort of hero character, and of course one of the first facts I learnt about this story is that Tony Adams, famous for Crossroads, recently wonderfully characterised in Nolly, Russell T Davies's series about Noel Gordon, the famous matriarch of Crossroads, and Tony Adams was a good friend of hers. He didn't do the commentary that we did for the Green Death. We thought we were going to get everyone. We thought we were going to get him, Roy Evans. It was going to be a really busy one, and it ended up, I think, was it Colin Mapson, Richard Franklin, and Nancy, Mitzi McKenzie, because Rolf wouldn't do it, and Tony Adams, I think, wouldn't do it because it was on a Sunday. I think, which was I don't know. I don't know if he's religious, or I don't know if he just couldn't be asked. But anyway, I like his performance. I like his character. I like that we have the sort of the man with a conscience within, and I totally buy that he knows John Rolfe's character. Here is the Minister for Ecology, over the shoulder shot of Jeremy the Prime Minister, because we can't see the Prime Minister, of course, but the suggestion might be that it's Jeremy Thorpe. History took that in a different direction. But the Minister of Ecology is Richard Beale, Bat Masterson in The Gunfighters, the voice of the Refusions in the Ark, the propaganda voice in the Macra Terror, none of which were directed by Michael Bryant, but Michael Bryant was a great friend of Richard's because Michael Bryant likes anybody who likes the sea, and Richard Beale was still going out in his motorboat in his early 90s. Wonderful voice he has, Richard Beale, very deep voice. And he's very good in this, but Michael used him all the time. And I think, this is a very small part for him to be playing. But I think Richard was one of those actors who, would do parts big or small and has some great roles in Michael Bryant stuff. I like that swift kick up the backside. Would you care to administer it? I think that's a lovely line. There's some witty bits of dialogue in the sort of alpha male badinage that you get here. That's it's besuited alpha male. The masculinity is parlayed in a proper speak, but I like it. It's all rather fun. So that's it for Richard Beale, but I'm sure I talked about him a lot on The Gunfighters. He had quite a sort of terse and downbeat sense of humour. Wrote a book about his time in the Navy, which I have, called One Man's War, and was still acting into his 90s, and would have loved to have done a proper interview with him. But, and he declined very nicely, saying, you should interview me, I've been in everything. But I said, and what I'd do is I'd put it out on the internet. I will have absolutely nothing to do with the internet because of identity theft and all of that sort of thing. So he'd obviously got his bee in his bonnet about the internet. But he used to ring up Any Answers. There's episodes of Any Answers where he rings up, he was a correspondent, and he was interested in stuff. And as I say, he was quite pugnacious. And I've always liked him as an actor, so I was really pleased that I got to meet him when we did the Gunfighters commentary, and he was very jolly. Whereas I've never got to meet John Rolfe, sadly. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he was obviously less, not that he didn't trust the internet, he just didn't seem, either he was not interested, or he hated the idea, or as I say, it wasn't just me that approached him, because we approached him for the DVDs too. But anyway, we never got him. A shame, because I mentioned it to my brother, and he said, it was fine, it was really nice. You never know people's reasons. I actually think he does a really good job here. I like the readiness in his voice too, but I like the way he does the taken over acting, where he's slightly robotic, but it's not hokey zombified stuff. It's and then when he does the sort of I have a headache and all of that, and the way he tries to be formal with Elgin, it's like the sort of the computer that's taken over his mind is saying this is how you talk to somebody when you're trying to be formal with them, but it comes across as not quite human. I think it's really nicely judged and really nicely played, and you can see in what he's doing here the conflict within the guy who's his mate, and also the fact that he's his actions might harm another human being. I think he does all that really, really well. So I'm sad that he didn't sign my things, and that he can't have been annoyed, can he? Because he actually bothered to send them back. Or maybe that's just because he realised that because they did have other people's signatures on, that it would have been a bit mean not to have done. But anyway, he didn't sign. I'm sad about that. My brother's got his autograph because he signed my brother's Richard III poster, and I haven't. There we go. I like that. Here's one of the rare occasions of smoking in Doctor Who. That always made me feel very grown up. I am a reformed smoker now. I wasn't a smoker when I was younger. I was quite a late start because my mum smoked, so I never thought it was cool. But then I started at university, and then when I do everything, I did too much. I did. I did. I was a bit of an anorak, whereas most people smoke now and again. I chain smoked, and now as I record this, I'm nearly 13, 14 years free of them. But the hangover from that is that I always felt I was desperate for Doctor Who to be grown up. So if people were smoking, it always felt like Doctor Who's grown up. And of course, it happens surprisingly little. Well, I suppose no, because it's a kids' programme. But considering if you watch other television of the time, everybody's got a fag all the time. I remember watching The Tomorrow People, which I came quite late to. I read about it, but I know, and a friend lent me the box set, and one of the plot of one of them, or a plot development of one of them, hangs on the fact that Ginger, who's the Hell's Angel friend of theirs, has nipped out to get some fags. I love the way he says I have a headache. And that these two guys know exactly what to do. And I also like the way that Ben Howard is sitting on Jerome Willis's desk, and I quite like the relationship that Hinks and Stevens have. It's all little bits that have been worked out by the actors that just make it seem like this is part of a world that has existed prior to this. And of course now we have this thing, don't we, where I think Boss is going to decide that he's reached the end. And there was always I'm sure there was I remember there being an interview with either Dudley Simpson or Michael Bryant or both, where I'd been led to the impression that you saw Fell jump, and that Dudley Simpson had added a sort of musical sting to take the sting out of the suicidal act, which is quite strong stuff for a kids program. So I was quite surprised when I saw this sequence where actually you see him go over the side, but that's it. The rest is left to our imagination. And I thought maybe that had been a cut or something like that, but it was just been I'd put two and two together from the interviews that I'd read to make a metaphor I can't see through. But to make I'd assumed that from the pieces I'd put together that you'd see the fall, which you do in, of course, many other Doctor Who's. They slap a bald wig on Roy Scammell and cut to film and off he goes. But they don't do it like that. But this is pretty grim stuff. Now, this isn't quite a Bellboy or a Maximilian style, because it's computer influenced suicide. But suicide, I love the way it goes totally silent as well. That's a really nice touch. That's, it's when it's shut off, we just suddenly have that moment. Unfortunately, because this is continuous recording, in taking his headphones off, it does give him sort of slightly Professor Kettlewell, batty scientist hair, because if you're a balding man with hair to the sides, as indeed I am, you are prone to that slightly sort of owl-like owl ears thing if your hair sticks up on the side. Which he's obviously smoothed down here, because this is slightly different. And I love the way he does that as well. Is the way he's just staring ahead of him when he puts his legs over the edge. And I think one of the reasons he's got his hand over his head is because that's unlikely to be John Rolfe, because they won't have got him on film just for that. So he's disguising himself. So you do actually see it from the outside, but you don't see the fall. And of course, you are a sentimentalist, and this is really nice that it's already sort of showing that Stevens, for all his sort of treatment of the Brigadier, he's got his own internal conflict going on, and I really enjoy the different layers of that, because it means there's something, even though some of this, we're back and forth a lot to those boardrooms and with those characters, there are different layers and nuances to the relationships between the different bad guys, which I think helps to make that wine's a horrible colour. Now, often in a show, you'd look at wine that colour and go, oh, that's just that, that's crap prop buying, or that's somebody's mixed the Ribena badly. That doesn't look like any Merlot I've ever seen, but that does look like some damson wine that I'm a country boy. My mum and indeed friends of ours would often proffer, homemade wine that would indeed be that colour and would indeed taste like, petrol that's had a rose leaf dipped in it. But so I actually think, I'm not sure it's deliberate that they've done that, but I think that the not very deep and rich wine colour is pretty accurate. Now, I did know something about some of these people, some of these extras in the Nut Hutch, and I can't remember now. I think one of them's gone on to do a thing, or knows a friend of mine. I think it might be that one, but the one standing on our head. But I can't remember now. See, this is what you tune in for. I know a fact about one of these people, and I can't remember what the fact is. This is the stuff. This is worth £3 a month on Patreon. Now, I think this does interest me. The idea of is that I'm vegetarian, but I'm not a crusading one. It's very much a personal choice, and I have been since I was 11, so for quite a long time. But what does interest me is why we find it acceptable to eat one dead thing and not another. Why is it okay to eat the leg of a cow? I have no problem with anyone eating the leg of a cow, and found it very tasty in the past. But why do we find that okay and not a locust, say? And it's to do with the aesthetic of insects and things. But it's funny how we evolved to think one is palatable, one isn't, when actually the protein value, as he explains in that rather educationally, is very high. So why have we evolved to be squeamish about things that would actually help us and would help our ecology and would help our own internal biology? That's really interesting. I think this is lovely, the way that they're having a nice time, and they've created this lovely vibe in the Nut Hutch. And again, I like the fact that the Brigadier's fitting in there nicely. And then when the doctor comes in and announces that Bert has died, it's a real moment. You really feel it. And I like the way that Ben Howard is totally underplaying Hinks throughout this. He's not really holding much eye contact or stuff. He's really sort of poking the performance in under the radar, which I rather like, especially for that sort of heavy sort of character. Lighting in here is very good as well, because of course it's at night time. Night time helps with the atmosphere. Love that log fire. I mean, that's how I would have watched a lot of Doctor Who. in the is in our cold house in the countryside in front of a log fire. So a log fire always reminds me a bit of Doctor Who, and that sort of too warm glow on one cheek and slightly chilly on the other side. Used to get chilblains like nobody's business. Don't get chilblains anymore. I think they've probably been outlawed by Europe. No, but that's funny. It's a thing I always used to have as a kid, was chilblains. Now, I've seen this scene written up as being naff. It utterly chimes with my worldview, and maybe, as the person that likes to interview an actor who only had 2 lines because it's a conduit to Doctor Who, and it's a point of view we'll never get. And I love the fact that I've met and encountered all of these people, and I totally chime with Professor Jones's, nearly proper kiss there in Doctor Who, and that's of course totally believable. That's lovely. I love the way that they do that. Yeah, it really does help that these two are, had a relationship at the time. I think you really, really buy it, and I think it's quite tenderly done. But Professor Jones's reassurance to Joe that it's okay to be sad because, as he says, in the whole history of the world, there will never be another Bert, and it's the same with all those, people that I've had the pleasure of interviewing. They and anybody you meet, which is why I always try and be nice to everybody, and why I always try and anybody I encounter, treat with respect, and even let off if they do something awful. It's because they might be having a bad day, or because we all have a universe of our own terrorist faces, because everybody is just trying to get through life the way they see fit. And but also, everybody is unique, and that's rather special. And that is tragic. Poor Doctor Who. He's basically gone, look at my big blue thing. Oh, God, Toby, come on. And she's gone, yeah, lovely, nice for you. It throbs. No, let's stop doing that now. But that's quite funny, and I like the fact that he's so childish that he takes Professor Jones away as well. But it is rather sad. Pertwee straddles there, the humorous and the serious. It's desperately sad that Jo has basically gone. She's basically scrolling through her Twitter while he's saying, "I've got this magic stone," and she's like, "Yeah, it's all right, love." Now that's quite a nice effect, although you can slightly see the shadow of the rod puppet. But no, that's okay. That's okay. Again, I think it's slightly better than it was on original broadcast, but it is a bit CSO-tastic. I remember this, my friend Raza, who I was at university with, who's now a very famous actor, Raza Jeffrey. I remember being a bit disappointed with Raza because he said, "Oh yeah, I saw that and it was a bit crap." And I like the POV of Jo. That's quite exciting. Oh, and I just unfortunately didn't press the button in time to stop because I like reading the credits and I like seeing what order they're in. But I was literally I did press the button, but it stopped. So unfortunately, we don't have the music to accompany the end of this episode. I must remember that. But yeah, that's a good cliffhanger. The old POV of the maggot. But of course, don't want to spoil it. But I'm going to. We've already had the setting up that Hinks is going to go and nick the thing back. So his timely intervention, not very timely for him, but we'll save Jo next week. So that's pretty much the last we've had of Ben Howard as well, who I think is lovely as Hinks, and he's a character that gets loads more in the book because I think Malcolm Hulke suggests he's a bit. He has, his slight learning difficulties, and he's into comics and cartoons, and he's a bit of a sort of a slightly more simplistic individual than we get on screen, and that's an interesting. Again, it's just a way of Malcolm Hulke lets us into the mind of that character rather well in the book, and there's an illustration of him as well in the book, isn't there? Where he it looks like he's holding a miniature Doctor in his hand. I think because of the perspective on it. I seem to recall. God, it's so long since I've flicked through that book. I might go and smell it later because I know exactly where it is. Well, I've got my Target books upstairs. I think I might also have, because I think I got it from the school library and was able to keep it. I think I've got the reprint of the Green Death as well, which just has the a very different looking fly, and me thinking, but hang on, that's not the fly from the episode, because that's on the original cover. Of course, the actual fly in the episode looks like neither of them. It's actually closer to the one on the second cover, which is, I think, by John Geary. But it was when they had a few of those, didn't they? They had a Sea Devils that came out with a slightly different cover as well, that I always think of as imposters. Even though they have their own nostalgia to them now as well. So my favourite thing about episode 2, well, I'm still impressed with the lighting. I think that's marvellous. I do like some of the dialogue. They, administer the swift kick up the backside and are you threatening me? Yes, I think I am. I love the way that John Rolfe says, I have a headache, and the silence that accompanies the order for him to jump. I really like his possessed acting and the way that all of that is done, which can sometimes, it's stuff that could seem clunky and a bit embarrassing, and I think he judges it really nicely. But for me, I'm afraid it has to be, as I say, a bit that some people think is a bit naff, but it really struck me as something that spoke to sort of the way that I view things. I remember when I watched it first, and so I'm always quite happy to see it again, and it still does chime with me that Professor Jones's assertion that it's the reason it's sad that Bert has died, which is why I sometimes get a bit cross with Doctor Who when, say, non-speaking characters die and people don't really acknowledge it because they're extras in a show, and TV often does it where, if a regular dies, it's a tragedy, but if a supporting character dies, it's not so sad. And you go, but in real life, you don't watch somebody die and go, oh yeah, but actually they're not a regular in my series, so this is slightly less harrowing. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think the weight that it gives to the death of a guy who's not even in this episode, we last saw him in episode 2. Roy Evans is not in episode 3, but the way that he gets that announcement and it sort of kiboshes dinner, and then that we spend a little bit of time with, and instead of going, never mind that now, as has been said in some episodes of Doctor Who, when somebody goes, but somebody's dead, never mind that now, and you go, really, that's a bit harsh. To actually go, no, it's okay to be sad about that, and here is for why. I love it. So if people think that's naff and I'm naff for liking it, yeah, okay, don't care. I don't mind being a bit sentimental. I don't mind that kind of dwelling on the sentiment of a minor character. I don't think it holds up the adventure at all. There's enough in that episode that I think that little moment is earned and actually is a respite from from the action in the mines, and then the boardroom stuff between the Brigadier and Stevens, and then the sort of dramatic, suspicious stuff going on at Global Chemicals, to have that moment. And actually, I love all of that stuff. It didn't interest me as much when I was younger, but actually the whole setting up of the Nut Touch, and that feels like a place in a community that has a different feel and texture to the other places in the story, just makes the whole thing sort of breathe and a little bit more real. And of course, it's still relevant today. What they're doing is still very much. As I record this, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has just dialed back on a lot of green initiatives. So I'm going to have to give back 3 of my 7 bins. I haven't got 7 bins, but I wonder if when this goes out in a few months' time on iTunes, whether people will still be referring to Rishi Sunak as Rishi 7 Bins Sunak, because that's what he is right now. But before we get this episode into one of the bins, let's see what Reuben Herfindahl is going to choose as his favourite thing of episode 3 of The Green Death.
I have a really simple one for this. It's the maggots. It's the quintessential Doctor Who enemy after the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Centaurans. But you bring up 70s Doctor Who to anyone, and they're going to remember the maggots. They're brilliant.
Well, Reuben, you're right. It is the one with the maggots, and they are excellent, but I'd kind of chosen them last week, but I did specify that it was the cliffhanger as well. Do I get a point for that? Yeah, I don't know. You decide. I mean, it doesn't. Should I have more of a sense of competition about myself? Should I go? Yeah, I deserve a point for that. Because the rules are, if I choose one in episode 2 and it's chosen in episode 6, I still get a point for it. But then, of course, whatever I chose for episode 6, I don't get a point for. So it comes with a compromise in terms of my tally. But do I get my point for the maggots? I suppose I might do, but that still leaves me 2-1 down. So, look, I'll let you decide. If any of you care. But yeah, I mean, they're absolutely a great choice. And of course, they're realised in lots of different ways, which, is always a tricky one, because it's a sort of sensible way of doing it. Well, if we can do it in long shot better with real maggots, and on film with the condom, but then in the close up we need the puppets. But a bit like with the Slitheen, they realised early on with New Doctor Who, don't do it in one scene as CGI and then do it as in another scene as somebody in a suit, because the disparity between the two will be profound. And I think there is an element of that with the maggots, but that works slightly better, I think, in classic Who than in New Who, because New Who, like all new television, sort of needs, uniformity is part of, which is why you have the same director of photography, the same incidental musician, is it still has to look to a sort of passing punter as easily identifiable as Doctor Who. So therefore there needs to be consistency within an episode. Whereas in old Doctor Who, you'd go, well, yeah, if we're doing that on film, we might need to make that out of that. But if we're doing it on the videotape, we might need to make it out of that. And they've clearly done that with the maggots, where they've achieved them in 4 or 5 different ways, depending on what is required of that particular scene or that particular setting or whatever. And I think that's rather fun, because as a viewer, you're sort of going, oh yeah, okay, well, I can see why they've done that, and they're, and I don't know. I just think you get away with that a little bit more in classic Who, because I think as a viewer you are in on the secret. Nobody's trying to necessarily say this is real. They're asking you to accept that this is the best way that we can of presenting this, and please go along with it. And you go, oh yeah, okay, I can see what you've done there, and now I'm yeah, and you've carried that off successfully or not, and okay, I'll go with it. I don't know if I've just made that up, but it feels to me that that doing it in different ways, I think, is more in keeping with the way that old television was made than the new television is made. And that's not to judge one in relation to the other. I can absolutely see why you wouldn't want to do it now, but I can also absolutely enjoy that they did do it then, and that's okay in both elements. So the one with the maggots, but the maggots done in lots and lots of different ways. Anyway, that's going to be that for this one. I'm now going to go and put this episode together and put it out for the patrons, but this will all be a distant memory when it goes out to you iTunes, Podbean and Spotify people, but I wish you equally well. And anyway, I will stop rabbiting on, because I don't want to give you a headache. Well, thank you very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Reuben Herfindahl. Reuben is also a patron of these podcasts, and I'm extremely grateful to him for his support over the years. Other patrons to whom I'm also extremely grateful include Lee Wood, Mr. Withit, Chris Williams, Rich Wiggins, Kevin West, Peter Ware, Gavin Ware, Alistair Wallace, Jeff Walker, Gary Wales, Lee Wakerley, John Turner, Fanran Sang, Sidney Truett, Jason Thompson, Richard Thomas, Dr. Gary Thomas, Mark Swan, Chris Stokes, David Spofford, Joey Stephen, Matthew Speddings, David Spencer, Andrew Snedden, Richard Smith, Trevor Smith, David Smith, Dale Smith, Gavin Skinner, John Sheehan, Christopher Sharp, Frank Shales, Samuel, Edward Salt, Nick Salmond, Matt Sawyer, Tom Selinsky, Gavin Reimel and John Rumpet. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like your name read out on the credits, well, that is one of the perks of being a patron. I've mentioned Patronville a lot during this podcast. I try to keep it out of the body of the podcast itself. It just feels a little dirty to me. But I don't have any huge objections doing it, but I think it should really be left for the end, like a sort of little, like a little... And now a message from our sponsors, although some do that, don't they? Some actually have a message from this. I don't have sponsors, but, if I were to be sponsored, it would probably be by my local co-op, which occasionally has special offers on those little desserts that come in ramekins. So not only is it a slightly naughty dessert, which when they're £4.50, it's way too much, but they occasionally do them for £2.50, and I think that's reasonable because you get two, so it's £1.25 each, and you get to keep the ramekin. I mean, I've got a pile of ramekins, and I don't use the ramekin, but nonetheless, I feel, like when you buy a chocolate bar, you don't keep the wrapper, do you? Because who needs a wrapper? But if it came in a ramekin, I'd keep the ramekin. Yeah, that's a message to chocolate bar manufacturers. Doing a ramekin, might buy one. I do, but I buy them anyway. But anyway, my local co-op, it's a shop and it's nearby. There, that's the sort of thing that I could do if I was to have advertising on these podcasts, but I don't. Instead, I go for the patron model, and that means that if you so choose, you can support these financially. It's the way that these things happen these days, is that people choose to contribute to the output of people whose work that they enjoy, and there's a few people who do for these, and I am massively grateful. In fact, I'm quite shocked that people do. I mean, I really am, but it's quite heartening that people do. And if you would like to be among their number, what you get is you get 3 releases per week. Although I recently, in fact, tonight on the after doing the podcast that I've just done, a couple of other chums jumped on, including Jim, who's a patron here, who said I was chatting and we were actually saying that you do too much. So shut up. I mean, saying it in a nice way, but he was actually going, you don't need to do 3 releases a week. And Stephen actually pointed out, Stephen Shapansky, I mentioned at the top, that perhaps I'm releasing lockdown levels worth of stuff on my Patreon. So all I'm saying is it's worth your £3 a month, unless you want me to shut up, in which case, well, I suppose you could come on and pay me for my silence. But anyway, it seems that the consensus seemed to be that you get a decent amount for your buck at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. Not just getting your name read out, but also, you get bonus material, advance releases, you get monthly exclusive AMAs, and all that sort of thing. A Monday, a Wednesday, or in some cases that bleeds into the Thursday release, and a Friday release, and pictures of my dog on a Tuesday. So patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. The lowest tier is £3 per month, and that's where you get most stuff. There are things to lure you up the tiers, but all of the audio and video content is at the lowest tier. But you could also do the Ko-fi model, where you're not tied to any monthly subscription. Oh yeah, because by the way, with the Patreon as well, if you pay for a year in one go, you get a 10% discount, whatever tier you're on at. But Ko-fi is a way of just occasionally throwing a tip my way if you've liked a particular one, or liked a particular release, or you're feeling I'm sounding particularly hungry or sad, and that's at kofi.com/Toby Hadoke. But what costs you nothing is to go to iTunes, Spotify, everywhere, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you like, and leave lovely reviews to this. But liking and subscribing and leaving a 5-star review, and we're a world of extremes. Nothing else will do apart from the 5 stars and a few lines, outlining what you like about these. Is really helpful in this cyberspace world, where just having anything that makes your algorithms look a bit sexier to next door's algorithms, then it all helps. So do that. That costs you nothing. But any way that you can support these is, of course, hugely appreciated. And just listening is a support. So I hope there's enough herein that entices you so to do. Do you like social media? Would you like to find me on it? Well, I'm at Toby Hadoke on Twitter. Or is it now, do people call it X? Well, I still say Opal Fruits, so I'm still saying Twitter. and at Hadoke Podcasts. These podcasts have their own feed. I'm also on Instagram at toby.hadoke, and I have my own Facebook fan page as well. I have to address that. It's not a fan page, but it's not my personal page. It's a performer's page, comedy page, whatever. It's me as an abstract concept rather than as a family man. It's still me. It's I don't have people, but it's where I'm more likely to put trailers for work stuff and less likely to put pictures of my kids, and that's as it should be. So yeah, if you're interested in my creative output, that's where and I've exceeded the amount of people I can have on my personal page, so I'm plucking up the courage to. It feels wrong. It feels like it's like I'm not very good in the garden, because you're supposed to cut things back and then they grow back beautifully, but you feel like you're killing it, don't you, if you cut a rose back down to the base? But of course then it grows back and the flowers grow on the new growth. Feels a bit like that with the Facebook, is that if I erase somebody, I'm killing them, but of course I'm not. But yeah, if it's someone I don't know, they should be on my work page, and I should just have friends on my personal Facebook page should just be people I've actually met. But I still can't bring myself to press the erase button, even though I set this in motion about 2 years ago, trying to migrate people over to my professional page. Anyway, that's something for me and my God to work out between. Don't know why I'm doing. Well, if there's a place to do it at the end of the end credits bit on a middle episode of a John Pertwee story, why the hell not? This bit's not. This could be anything, and tonight it's this. So there we go. Anyway, that's for me to sort out. But yeah. I'll end as I began, to mention Stephen Schapansky. Isn't it nice that I've got friends in another part of the world who I've met through Doctor who do, there's so many different sorts of Doctor Who podcasts and output and creativity out there, and I enjoy that of everybody, and it's all manifests itself in different ways, and it's great that we all have our own little areas that we go into. So Tim with the missing episodes has excelled himself there, and exceeded all expectations of how much detail can be gone into about that most fascinating of subjects, and it's great to kick back and listen to those. And it was lovely to be a part of one that's just a response to a brilliant podcast that they've just done, but then Stephen and his colleagues and friends on Radio Free Skara really have burnt the torch brightly for professional proper Doctor Who podcasting, and there's all sorts of different variations with different people, and I've been lucky enough to be a guest on all sorts of different podcasts, and I think it's great. I think it's a great sign of the sort of creativity and output of Doctor Who fans, and the way that we're so keen to manifest our love for this show. I mean, it flabbergasts me that there's an audience for a 49-year-old man going, I nearly met this actor, or I might have a fact about that person that I can't quite remember, or this is what I think about the cover of this book. But you listen to it, and some of you even listen this far, so then you can hear me doing my own mental admin about my social media pages. I mean, have you not read? If you're doing this and you haven't read The Mill on the Floss, or Far from the Madding Crowd, or even Charlotte's Web, I don't know why I chose that. Then I'm not sure that's doing any of us any good. But it's doing me some good, because it keeps me off the streets and stops me crying into my pillow. I cry into my pillow for other reasons. But anyway, Doctor Who podcasting is a good thing, and there's lots of it out there, and I'm lucky to have met so many people through it, and even met some of you who have not actually met but have communicated with and fed back to and from and all of that. It's a bit of a loving, isn't it? I think it's because the Green Death is so cosy, even though it's got death in the title, and it's about horrible maggots in viscous oozy stuff that makes you glow with luminescent putrefaction, and it's about evil mind control and terrible corporate malfeasance. It's just really cozy and lovely, and I love it. Isn't that great? The whole thing about Doctor Who. It's comforting, and yet it's about death, destruction, violence. That's a brilliant thing to pull off. Comforting violence. That's what Doctor Who is. Comforting violence. Oh, bless it.